What's up, man?
Hey, dude. What's going on? Episode 1.
Episode 1. Inside BJJ studio.
That's okay. Hold on. I'm setting up my new phone. Wait. Get started.
How's it going so far? I'm shocked that you actually bit the bullet and got a new phone. Oh, you have to face unlock it?
Hold on. Yeah.
You're always wearing a hat. You should probably have it on.
No. Move your head slowly to complete the circle. Use face. Nobody's going to use it with a mask. That's how crazy we've become.
With a mask as well?
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk to you about that. The old mask times. What year did you move here?
I moved here. Sorry about that. I apologize. I moved.
Episode 1 and you fuck me.
I know. I'm sorry, guys. Like, this guy's a terrible guest. I moved here in 2021.
Okay, right in the height of it.
Right. In California, it felt like it was the height of it. Mm-hmm. Out here, it felt like it wasn't treated as that big of a deal.
Yeah, there were still some things we were unsure of out here. I think I moved up here around then, or shortly after as well. And we moved because even though it seemed okay here and you could deal with some things, we still didn't know if they were going to close the roads because they were talking about that at the time.
Oh, and you moved here from Virginia?
We moved here from North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yeah, at the time.
Dang.
We went from Virginia to North Carolina and then here. We were in North Carolina for about a year and then moved here. And I've been here for almost 5 now.
Dang.
I think. 4 or 5.
Yeah.
What was going on in California that made you move?
California went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel like happened in California. Like, they pretty much lost their minds. And it felt like the momentum, which was heavy and of great magnitude, mm-hmm. was headed downwards. And I didn't see any possible way that was going to turn around in the future, in the near future. And the thought of spending 2 decades while the state figures itself out.
If it figured it out,
it just didn't. It's like, man, I don't want to do this. I have about 2 decades of hard work in me. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, then what? I just,
yeah. And
let's go.
A lot of what you could have done or might not have done or whatever would have been left up to people like Gavin Newsom and stuff like that, and what you'd be allowed to do or not.
Forget that, dude.
Yeah.
Forget that, man.
You have a wife and kids to think about, businesses to take care of.
It's not worth it, dude.
No.
Not worth it.
Not at the time. And with hindsight, we could see like even further how they went crazy.
Yeah.
Because, at the time they were like, oh, we're doing the hard thing because it's right. Or we believe it's right or whatever. But at the same time, you have Tennessee, Florida, North Carolina to an extent. Not really Virginia, the states I'm familiar with. Basically free other than, hey, be careful.
Yeah.
That it was interesting to live on the other side of the country, not even here yet in Nashville, and see how California was reacting to all this. I mean, the craziest thing that I saw, probably personally to me, was them putting sand in skate parks.
Which happened more than once.
Yeah. It was more than just the Santa Monica Bowl.
It was like it happened and then people went and dug it out and they filled it up again.
Yeah. That's nuts.
They had put, in some of the parks in Stockton, they had taped off the playgrounds with caution tape. It looked like there was like a murder scene there or something, To prevent kids who, even we had the information at the time knowing that it didn't really affect kids that much. Yeah.
To stop them from enjoying the outside.
Right.
It's nuts.
It was nuts. And I think living in California for 42 or 43 years up to that point.
Because you grew up in Stockton.
I grew up in California, in Stockton. Mm-hmm. Even if you travel, and we traveled a little bit, and I've been out of the country a few times and been all over, and we didn't have like a lot of money or anything, but you don't realize that you're in a bubble when you live in California already. You're just in like this California fake world that exists. But then you put COVID on top of that and it's madness.
Just tits up.
It was crazy.
Quick.
So when we came here, it was a revelation. It was a revelation. Like, whoa, people are walking around and they don't all have masks on.
Yeah.
And they're not standing 6 feet apart, and they put American flags up in their yard and nobody shakes their head or looks down their nose at them for it. So that was like, wow.
So that was, were there any other like immediate differences that you saw? Like were there things you weren't allowed to do when you lived there that you could all of a sudden like go out to dinner or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of things that we couldn't do because everything was closed. So the last time we went to San Francisco, we went to why did we go? I can't even remember why we were there, but we went. And like then
family or jiu-jitsu or something?
Something. It wasn't even jiu-jitsu because there was like no jiu-jitsu tournaments going on.
That's right.
We went for some reason. I don't even remember why, but we went and the city was just terminated. It was so odd, especially timing wise, because we spent a lot of time there over the years and you get used to, hey, it takes about this long to get across the city at this time. And it was like, dude, you could get anywhere in 5 minutes because nobody's out. Everything's closed. And then the homelessness and just the crazy zombie streetwalker people just showed up and they just filled in. It's almost like you need regular people doing regular things in an area to keep all the weeds out. And as soon as you we're boarding up downtown, no one's allowed to work downtown, everything's closed, then it just fills up with crime and homelessness and drug addicts because there's nobody down there. If those streets are filled with people who are working down there during the day, then that element doesn't have as much space to exist. Yeah. So
I've seen that just increase a little bit with the working downtown, just seeing a little bit of an increase with the construction on Second.
Sure.
Between the bomb in 21 and then, or 20, whichever one it was, and then just all the events they have and close down everything else almost every weekend. And it's a couple of them walk by and I'm like, man, fuck, there's got to be something done.
Yeah,
it's not safe for them even at that point.
Yeah. What is that street that dead ends into Second? And
Commerce.
Maybe it is Commerce. That gets a little dicey sometimes.
It can, right down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we flew out, speaking of the bomb, when we flew out here in December, I want to say it was of 2020.
It was either 20 or 21.
It was Christmas Day, I believe. It was 2020. That took place right as we were boarding our flight from Sacramento to Nashville.
Really?
Yeah. So when we arrived, no cell phones, everything was down, everything was chaotic, the weather was trash.
It wasn't good.
And I was like, oh man, what are we doing? Are we actually going to do this? Like, we're going to move here?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a rough hello.
And Nashville's laid out, it has they're not mountains, but there's a lot of hills.
It's hilly. Yeah.
And it kind of blocks your line of sight. You can't really, you kind of feel like you're in the country all the time, even though you're not. And I just couldn't wrap my head around how it was laid out. And I just thought, man, I don't know. This is some real backwoods kind of stuff,
And on top of that, they're blowing shit up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But
that was unfortunate. And then, I mean, they didn't talk about it too much afterwards, which, that's a different topic, I suppose. But that was spooky. 'Cause I know my memory of that is Mariah and I had just got to my stepmom and dad's house to have Christmas together and have eventually have dinner and stuff. And then we just heard about that. We got to the house and we heard about it. And my crazy mind, I'm like, oh shit, it's popping off.
Yeah.
There's going to be more because I come from anytime something like that happens, especially a bomb or explosion, anything like that, I think of being around for 9/11 and I'm like, oh man, there's always more than one kind of deal.
Yeah,
so
sure.
We're all kind of trepidatious about, okay, what else is going on kind of deal. But Stockton all your life, was it easy enough to move because you'd been so fed up at that point, or was it real tough to leave? Because you'd mentioned a bubble, and I don't think that's just California, and I can't speak to that California part personally, because I've only spent a little bit of time in California when I was growing up, but I've seen in all of the places I've stayed when I was old enough to realize it, that most people that stick around in one spot for their whole life are in a bubble of one kind or another, and it doesn't matter what state they've been. And I've been in enough states to see that.
Yeah.
Like, I always encourage people to move. So, like, at that point, like I said, were you fed up enough with what you saw going on and, like, just we need to get out of here? Or was it something you'd had brewing for a while?
I think it was both.
Both?
So there was always this underlying desire to move somewhere else. One is just, I felt like, man, I've been in this town my whole life, and I just want to do something different. And then another was, man, this town is crazy. Like, even when California was going okay, Stockton was crazy.
You know, everyone knows about Stockton.
Yeah, so we were always trying to figure out how to get out. And we had often talked about moving to, like, North County, San Diego area. Let's go down there.
Military town.
Yeah, and that was kind of the original plan. We were trying to see if we could figure it out. It's just so expensive to move that...
Especially within California.
Yeah, it just was like, man, I don't know how this is going to work. And we were comfortable in Stockton. So, you know, that's sometimes could be like a golden handcuffs, you know? So there was a desire. I would say there was always a flame there to move. And then as things got worse and COVID happened, and my wife and I had less attachments to our kind of church that we grew up in, but we also, you know, so that made it a little easier to leave. But on the flip side, it was very hard because I had a gym that I had just opened like 3 years before that. And
I didn't realize it was that close.
Yeah, I was really struggling with that decision because
that's weird because this gym is almost 3, right?
It
so
is
it'd be
3.
like,
yeah.
So yeah, leaving as soon as you hit that 3 year. Yeah. I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was real hard. It was breaking the news was really, really difficult. And there was fallout immediately. People quit immediately, and people already quit because of COVID. And then that happened. And then after I left, probably in the first 90 days, there was another wave of people that left because they just decided they didn't like it anymore. And then, you know, it was just hard. It was hard to leave, and I really didn't want the gym to die because I had built really good relationships with some of those people, and some of them had been students at my previous gym. So I have known them for a while, and I know that they really enjoy jiu-jitsu, and it's a big part of their life. And, you know, I could close the gym. Of course, they would just go train somewhere else for sure. It's not like they would just give up and quit altogether, but I knew that they wanted to do it there. So I really, really put keeping the gym alive probably above profit in doing maybe what's best for me, you know? But I don't care.
Yeah, I identify with that. It's inspiring because I'm trying to do a similar thing myself. But
yeah,
I think it's worth it to try it. The more that I dip my toes in doing it, I think it's more worth doing what's meaningful to you than what's profitable.
Yeah.
I would love to talk about your upbringing a little bit because we've talked about it personally before, and it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So I joke with you a lot about leaving one cult for another.
Yeah.
the upbringing you had versus jiu-jitsu and being so entrenched in that now. So how did that affect you growing up, you think? Or can you, without obviously being mean about it, like, because you've never been mean about it in anything we've talked about, but can you describe it a little bit?
Yeah.
And describe kind of how coming up with it was?
Yeah. Cult, like, I like the word cult.
Me too. That's my company.
But it's such a charged word when you hear it, because most of the time people fall into two camps, when they hear the word cult, it's either crazy religious cult,
Jim Jones,
where everyone's going to end up, all the women are going to end up belonging to the cult leader, and then a bunch of them are going to die, more or less. Yeah. It's like more or less a doomsday cult in one way or another.
A lot of the times those are the guy, there's a famous comedian, I can't remember his name, but the line I love is the leader usually says, "Hey man, I talked to God. It's not up to me. I have to fuck your wife."
Yeah.
And that's usually how it goes.
Nothing I could do about it, dog.
Sorry, man.
I don't even want to do it.
I have to.
Yeah. Your wife is not very attractive, but I'm doing this for the Lord.
And hey, you're next.
Yeah.
It's usually, usually goes that way too.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, and I'm not even into guys.
The rules are rules.
For the Lord.
Dude told me to do it.
God, dude.
Or the other way.
The other way, I think, is like cult, like satanic sex cult, or like
the leaders of this country.
Like, yeah, well, yeah, but
personally,
maybe they're more into sex and control and drugs than they are into killing people.
Yeah,
it's like they want the obedience, but they're just deviant, and they don't want any checks on their deviance. Both not good. Don't get me wrong.
Not great.
So when I say that it was like a cult, I don't mean those kinds of cults. I just mean we were very fundamentalist, I guess. Like very fundamentalist, meaning the things that we said and believed, we pretty much did the best that we can do. So it was a very strict, like rigid upbringing, probably compared to average standards. It was one of those things where at a certain age, I realized that I wasn't like the rest of the kids. Because I did go to elementary school till the 6th grade. Then after that, they're like, you don't need education. No. After that, I went to homeschool. But when I was in elementary school, I remember Christmas coming up and all the kids celebrating Christmas. And I was like, oh, we don't celebrate Christmas. And I know people are going to go like, oh, it's Jehovah's Witness. We weren't Jehovah's Witness, though, right? We weren't that, but we also didn't celebrate Christmas. So I identified with the JW kids because there was a handful of them, and they would leave on those days. Like if you had a Christmas party, they wouldn't come to school that day.
Yeah, not allowed to celebrate.
Yeah. Now, my parents allowed me to go because they're like, hey, you're going to school. If they do that at school, you're just there. Yeah. But at home, we didn't celebrate it.
You guys wouldn't have done birthdays or anything like that, right?
We did birthdays.
Really?
Yeah.
Because JW kids don't do that either.
They don't do that.
I don't think they do any holiday.
They don't do any holidays. Okay. We did birthdays.
It's weird to me that you would do birthdays and not technically Jesus' birthday, or at least how it's celebrated.
Yeah, but that's because we didn't believe that was Jesus' birthday.
Right, yeah.
So for us, it was like, y'all are fools. Y'all spending your money on nothing, dog. So, but my grandparents celebrated Christmas. And so I would get it from them. I would get up there and get a couple gifts and get some experience with it. But at home, it was just like, this is a pagan holiday. It's all made up. None of it's real, and we ain't participating.
Which, to their credit, a lot of the
it's all true.
Traditions is pretty true.
Yeah. Look it up. It's mostly all true.
Yeah.
But, when you're 5,
it's magical.
You don't need to hear that.
No.
I never believed in Santa. I thought kids that believed in Santa were fucking, sorry, can I cuss?
Yeah.
I thought they were total idiots, dude. I'm like, y'all are dumb. So I always came up as a kid thinking I had secret knowledge in that sense. Not special knowledge, but that I knew how the way things were. And they were believing
reality.
Yes, and they were believing and in a way I kind of did, but in a way I wasn't. It's not necessary. Some of those things are okay. It's okay to believe in Santa when you're 7, dude.
Yeah.
Like, get over it, So anyway, we were fundamentalists like that. I didn't go to movies. I didn't go to a movie theater till I was an adult.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do.
The aspects we've talked about personally outside of this that sounded really culty to me, or the definition of cult is like keeping you within the belief system and not really encouraging or outright saying no to things like going to the movies or outside world stuff that would introduce you to things that would contradict the beliefs of the group.
Yeah, I think there was an element of that, whether conscious or unconscious or subconscious. I don't know, but that was at play. So you weren't supposed to have a television, but we did have a television. And you weren't supposed to listen to secular music, that's what we called it, or worldly music. That was another term for it. On the radio, you could listen to Christian music, but even then we kind of shunned it because it was like, that sounds like regular pop music. So it was more of, you can listen to these kinds of Christian artists or our own music that and this group I was in, they made their own music. They recorded it and put out tapes and CDs, and you know, we'd all buy each other stuff, and
basically just for the benefit of the members.
Basically like jujitsu, you know.
They made supplements.
Yeah. So there was a pretty big element of that, and thank God we had a TV, because I watched a lot of TV growing up. The TV was my window, even though it's a really distorted window, into the outside world, you know. But everything else, we went to church a lot. We did a lot of church activities, like almost every day of the week. It was quite often. And my dad was the pastor of the church, so that meant that we often had people living with us that were just like randos. Like, I didn't know any of these people. It would just be like, hey, we had one dude living with us who used to be, and I don't know if this is a proper term, but he used to be an Eskimo.
Okay.
His name was Fred. We called him Fred the Eskimo. And Fred,
solid name. Fred
lived with us, and then he was with us for a couple years, and when I was pretty young, he moved out, and not too much longer, a lady moved in. And I think her name was Peggy.
With Fred or instead of Fred?
Instead of Fred. Okay. Just another person moved in. And she was with us for a while, kind of got back on her feet. She moved out, and then not too long later, another person moved. And that was just a constant cycle. I hated it because every time somebody moved in, those people assumed power over my sister and I because we were kids. So they knew they couldn't tell my mom and dad shit, but when my mom and dad weren't around, they were telling us shit.
They were the new boss.
They were correcting us, and you need to do this and you need to do that. And, you know, my mom was pretty tough. Like, she didn't go for that kind of stuff. But, you know, when you're a kid, you're a kid. When you're 7 and some adult's getting on your case, like, we didn't talk back or nothing like that, you know? Yeah. So anyway, it was pretty fundamental religious. It was very strict. We read the Bible. By the time I was probably in my 30s, I had read the Bible like 7 or 8 times. We had to get up and teach Bible lessons when we were kids. We sang songs. We played in the church band. We did door-to-door visitation. We traveled all over to meetings. Like, we were we were banging for the Lord, dude. Like, we weren't playing around.
Yeah, y'all weren't fucking around.
No, but it was super strict, and there was a big emphasis on learning about history. So we read a lot, which I'm actually really grateful for now, because I feel like I got a good education. But the number one kind of driving priority for learning that was to determine what was false religion and what was true religion.
So it was obviously tinged with the beliefs of the group.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was kind of like cast into everything. And so we were very anti-religion. We felt like all the other religions were false religion except ours. And we were very big on, you know, arguing against and knowing all the points against this kind of church and that kind of church, and what happened in this year and what happened in that year. And, you know, all we talked about was the world empires and the Romans and the Reformation and the Middle Age. It's just like constant, man.
Sounds very know thy enemy kind of deal.
Very much.
Damn.
And so yeah, it was tough, man. And all my family was very integrated into the church. All my friends were in the church.
Well, you said your dad was a pastor.
My dad was the pastor, and my dad, the church was in Stockton, but there were several churches all over the country and even in other countries. So we were all affiliated, and we would get together and fellowship and all that stuff.
Did you ever have a guess of how many members?
I have no idea. Some of the congregations were, some of the congregations were big. Ours was small. We were like real small, 20 people.
Oh, really? Okay.
Maybe the biggest we got to was like 70 people. Wow. We were small enough that for a good stretch, when I was probably 11 or 12, we had church in our house 3 times a week.
Oh, because it didn't facilitate going to another place.
Well, I think what happened is we had a building. We had this building in Stockton that we were renting, and it wasn't really zoned to have church. But we were like, whatever, that's man's law. We conveniently did a lot of that, by the way. Man's law, God's law. Look, taxes, man's law. So we were renting this building, and we had a member that knew that, and he didn't care. He was down for the cause. And then he got into a beef with my grandma, which is really funny. And my dad was the pastor, and my grandma's his mother-in-law. So it turned into a big, dramatic bunch of crap. But
it's not only a church thing, it's a family issue.
God, it's so terrible, man. It was like all the time. So what happens is this guy quits, and he turns us in, and we get kicked out of the building. So they're like, where are we going to have church? And my dad's like, we're going to do it in our house. Duh. And I mean, when I say we had church in the house, we had church in the house, dude. Like, we moved 3 times a week. All the furniture out of the way. We set up rows of chairs. We had a full drum set, a piano. The guitar guys brought their amps. We had full-on church service. We sang, we prayed, we danced. We freaking invited people to come in and worship with us. We did 3-hour Bible lessons on Sunday.
So this wasn't like a couple of friends get together for Bible study.
No, this was like an hour. Freaking bringing the sanctuary into the home. 3 times a week.
You're talking like 11, 12? You're thereabouts?
Somewhere around there.
Okay.
I was 11, 12. I remember because my sister was like 15, 16, and my sister had a lot of boys who were interested in her, and they were constantly coming over the house. These were not church kids.
Oh.
And so they would show up during church, and they'd like, is Jennifer? My dad would just be preaching. He'd be like, hold on, someone's at the door. He just answered the door. Hey, what's going on? I'm here to see Jennifer. Oh, well, we're having church right now. Would you like to come in? She's here. Would you like to come in? Sure. Take a seat. And he'd just be like, oh, crap. He'd be in church for 2 hours. We try to get him converted. We'd be praying for him. Dude, that was, everybody was a prospect. And we were selling the Holy Ghost, dude, and everybody was about to get it, man.
Yeah, that's an easy transition into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, for real.
Everybody can do it. Everybody's a prospect.
So, I mean, it was odd, dude. But, like, I liked having church in the house because I would just slip off. I'd slip off into the kitchen and eat. I'd go into my dad's room and watch TV. Like, just do it all in the DL. Yeah, forbidden TV. Yeah.
I like the idea of you guys having church in the front sitting room in the parlor, maybe, or in the sanctum now, and you're slipping off to watch some WWE, some SmackDown.
I would go watch, because we had like daytime service and nighttime service on Sunday. Sunday was basically, you didn't do nothing on Sunday but go to church. That's all you did. And we love the 49ers. I love the 49ers football team, but I never could watch the games because they're always on Sunday and we're always at church. But when we had church in the house, dude, I'd just slip off into my dad's room, put the game on. I got caught a couple times. Yeah. So we did that. My dad had a VCR. At a certain point, I remember my parents somehow managed to buy a VCR. And so we would try to record the games, but, it was so janky technology, wasn't that good.
For Monday, so it's not a sin.
Yeah. You could watch it on Sunday, just like way later after church, But thank God my parents had a TV, because some of the kids and most of the other people, and we didn't really broadcast that we had a TV.
I'm sure.
It's kind of like, yeah. But hey, man, I watched WWE, fell in love with it. I was like, this is tits, man.
At what point, so that was around 11 or 12, you think?
Yeah.
At what point did you start feeling yourself breaking from it?
Well, I think when you grow up in it, there were several stints where I had to go to church, but I didn't really want to be in church, and I was just like checked out, which makes sense.
I think a lot of kids
when you're
like
growing
that,
up,
regardless of denomination.
I almost got into some serious trouble when I was 13, and it kind of freaked me out. So I kind of backed off from being too. It was a dichotomy, because on one hand, we constantly had to present ourselves as like, we love you, God loves you, we'll do anything you want, like, what do you need, blah blah blah. My parents were good people. They backed up everything they said. They were not the kind of people that had one standard at the church for everyone else, and then we did something different. If anything,
Baptists.
it was the opposite. It was the opposite. It was like, hey, because I'm the pastor and you're my kid, you got to be extra on point.
Yeah.
There's no days off.
No dilly-dallying or dicking around.
Nothing at all, dude. You could not, don't let your good be evil spoken of. So, getting caught at a movie theater, woo, dude.
Rough stuff.
Yeah, it's give you anxiety, You'd have to get up and apologize to the church. So anyway.
So I never had a moment in my life where I had to feel like to sneak around the movie theater. There was always sneaking back in the house.
Yeah.
Right. That was the anxiety.
Yeah.
And even then, my mom and my dad's curfew was like, don't wake me up. Don't do anything stupid and don't wake me up.
Yeah. Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
Don't make me come looking for
if
some
I get
shit.
a call from jail, you're in some deep shit.
Yeah.
But,
right.
If you're not dicking around or drunk driving or something like that, then don't wake me up.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the question again?
At what point did you start to feel the break?
Oh, so I would say I got in a little trouble when I was a teen. And then around 15, I got really into the church. Like, I felt like I had a conversion experience as a teenager, and I got super into it.
Was this after the huge trouble?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a couple years after that.
Up to it.
Yes.
Had that feeling of conversion and
just
faith.
Yes. And went full potato and, for lack of a better word, I met Stella there, and I met Stella when I was 12, because we come from the same church. She was just the one in the Bay Area, and I was the one in the Central Valley. So I met her when her church came to my church in Stockton, because their church didn't have a baptism tank where you could baptize somebody. Okay. So they came to our church.
They needed a jug.
They needed it because we particularly believe like sprinkling ain't it, dog. Like you got to be dunked and come back up. And so, and we did them at the river too.
I was about to say we
did do that.
That's what I expected.
Yeah,
the river
for sure. We did that.
Just a quick side note: have you seen some of those mega churches where they have like a water slide into the baptism tank?
Is freaking rad, dude.
It's not. That is heretical.
So
God doesn't want you to do. That's ridiculous.
Remind me to come back to that though, because I have a funny baptism story. So, her church came to my church for a baptism service, and we met. I was 12 and she was 13.
Question about that. So I was baptized Catholic, or at least in a Catholic church when I was a baby. When you're supposed to, as soon as I was able to do it, as soon as I was, I don't know what the criteria is, but I was baptized as a baby. Did you guys do baptism at birth, or did you have to go through and get confirmed in some way to then be baptized as a knowing adult or anything like that? Because I have heard about that.
We did not, unless they've changed their policies, which I'm pretty sure they haven't. We were not big fans of baptizing babies or infants who don't really understand what the hell they're doing.
Really?
Yeah, our baptism, a lot of places are pretty hung up on what you say when you baptize somebody.
Okay.
Do you say in the name of the Father? Or do you say in the name of this? Or do you? And some people go, well, you got to say in the name of Jesus. The Bible says, well, our particular stance was in the name of means like under the authority of.
Okay.
You can say whatever you want to say, but if you're false religion, that baptism ain't legit.
Yeah.
You got to
it's in the name of the Antichrist, essentially.
It's in the name of the Baptist Church, the name of the Roman Catholics, or in the name of the Greek Orthodox, or in the name of the Latter-day Saints, or whatever. So we just
not yours.
Not exactly. You get it.
Not the right one.
It's not a real black belt, dog. Yeah. So not an IBJJF black belt.
Not getting that black belt courtesy.
I would say if we use the jiu-jitsu analogy, the IBJJF for us would have been the Catholic Church.
Okay.
Right? And we would have been some really out there odd jiu-jitsu school.
We recognize that IBJJF is a thing, But they're not correct.
We spend like 80% of our time, discrediting the IBJJF.
Okay.
So, I did get baptized when I was a kid. I wanted to get baptized. My parents didn't want me to get baptized. And I pushed.
In general or at that point?
At that point.
Okay.
So.
That's weird.
They were like, it's not time for you to be baptized. I was young. I was 5 or 6 years old. They're like, you can't really make a converted decision at this age. I think that's kind of how they felt.
So that's interesting. So for my upbringing and because we weren't that very strict about it, but my understanding of the belief system that I came up with, I had access to a lot of different belief systems, but the Christian belief system that I had, and I think it's Catholic, is if the baby's not baptized and it, God forbid, dies.
He did.
Gone forever. God doesn't know you.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me. That's a crazy belief to me, but it's still like what I came up with. It's like, get that baby doused as soon as you can so God knows who it is, just in case something bad happens.
We believe that water baptism is a sign of your repentance and your willingness to change your way of life.
With the metaphorical washing away of all the bad shit before that.
We definitely were driven by the John the Baptist story, and we definitely believed the part of it, and I'll paraphrase it because I don't have it memorized anymore, but there was a time where he says, like, I baptize you with water, but somebody's coming after me, and he's going to baptize you with the Spirit. I can't remember what the word is that the King James used, and with fire.
Okay. I would have guessed the blood of the lamb, but
it wasn't the blood. You got to be born of the water and the Spirit. Okay. So what we taught and what I was taught to believe and grew up in our faith was that you get baptized when and I don't know if this is what the audience wants, but I don't care.
Neither do I. That's what I want.
You get baptized in water. That is an outward sign of your conversion to the rest of the world and to God and to yourself. Now you have to be baptized in the Spirit. And that means you have to receive the gift of the Holy Ghost with the evidence of speaking in tongues. Okay. So if you don't speak in tongues, you don't got the Holy Spirit. And we believe that's what it meant to be born again.
Okay.
And that without that experience, you were not in the New Testament kingdom of God. So that was a very big push to make sure that everyone had that experience.
So between what you've already said and what some other details that we've talked about, it sounds to me that many pieces of different denominations of Christianity have been handpicked to meet criteria.
Yeah. Yeah, you could find, and that was actually, so getting back to the original question was, like, did you ever have a moment where you were like, wait a minute.
Starting to break.
Yeah. So I was really into it when I was 15, got really into it. I was homeschooled and I mostly just worked. I started working when I was 13 because they put me in homeschool in the 7th grade. My sister, I love you, Jenny, ran away. So my sister was like a rebel, dude. My sister broke all the rules. Like, she was just like, nah, fuck all this, dog. Like,
she the oldest?
She's the oldest. Gotcha. She's almost 5 years older than me.
Yep.
She was not the older sibling who's gonna like please mom and dad and do everything right. That wasn't it. That wasn't Jenny, dude. Jenny was like, I remember my first memory of Jenny being a rebel was she had this sleeveless sweatshirt. It wasn't like a tank top. It was a sweatshirt. It just didn't have sleeves.
Like one of those 80s workout crews?
Yes. Okay. Kind of, sort of. But it was a little more fitted, a little more finished. And it was 1984. This was the year. Okay. And it had the numbers 84 all over the shirt in different formats and fonts and stylistics, right? It was like one of those. It was a really cool looking shirt. But she was only allowed to wear it in the house. She wasn't allowed to, you couldn't go sleeveless. That was like, whoa.
Verboten.
That's bad. She couldn't wear pants. She had to wear dresses. She couldn't cut her hair. She couldn't wear makeup. She couldn't wear earrings. Can't have a bunch of jewelry. It's pretty strict. Okay, so it was picture day. I think it was 5th grade. It could have been 6th grade for her. And she snuck that sweatshirt to school and she changed into it and took her pictures in it.
Mm-hmm.
And when my dad found out, he went bananas, dude.
Really?
Oh, dude. My dad loved us, and I love my dad a lot. He's a very, very solid, honest person. He really is. You could give my dad the keys to the safe and everything. There might be more when you get back.
Yeah.
You know, he's just not, I've never seen him be dishonest. I'm sure he's made mistakes that I don't know about, but I've only seen him be honest to a detriment almost.
Yeah.
You know, having said that, he could get righteously indignant. Like, dude, he did not fuck around, dude. And when he said, like, you're getting a whooping when we get home, there was no getting out of it. It didn't matter what the fuck you said, how you said it. You could make promises. You could pray to God. You could start we'd speak in tongues in the car trying to get out of spankings in the back seat, dude. We'd be like, ha la 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 la. Like,
no, you're full of shit. You're getting it.
Dad's like, I'm glad you're feeling the spirit, but like, you're still going to get whooped when you get home. It's just, we never got out of it, ever, dude. So anyway, I was like, oh, Jenny's a rebel. So she ran away when she was 17. I'm not talking bad about her. Like, this is just her story, you know, and she was with child. My parents didn't know. She was hiding it, and it turned into a big ordeal. Mm-hmm. And when she ran away, I want to say it was around the time of the first Gulf War.
Is that 92, 91?
89, maybe?
89? Okay.
90, 89, 90?
It was right around when I was born.
That's wild. I was born in 78, so I had to be 10 or 11. So it was 89, 90, somewhere around there. And I think my parents were really struggling financially. I do know that. There was a time period around that time where we didn't have a car, we didn't have a washing machine, and we didn't have a refrigerator.
Damn, dude.
Yeah. So we lived with an ice chest. We had to walk to the store to get groceries, and we just carry it back. We didn't really have a bunch of money. Things were just hard. My mom cleaned houses, and my dad worked at a glass plant that closed down when I was young.
This is before even he got into accounting?
Yeah.
Wow.
And what happened was the glass plant closed. He got a severance, and this is like in the early 80s, you know. And his brother, his younger brother, had a tax business, a tax preparation business, and had a decent amount of clients. And he was having his own issues in his life. This is Big MF's dad. And his dad is schizophrenic, and it was starting to manifest.
Gotcha.
And, you know, him and so Matt's dad, Big MF's dad, his name is Matt also, Matt Sr., was married to my mom's sister. So the Freeman brothers married the Newman sisters. So anything that happened on either side of the family, everybody felt, because we were so integrated in that sense. So I think that's why I'm so close to Matt. He's like my brother, of course, more or less, you know. So when he started having schizophrenia and his relationship with my mom's sister started going south, and it was really bad, and they asked my dad, hey, can you help him in the business? Like, he could just kind of show you how to do it. And you could just, so my dad just kind of came on as a helper and just was like, you know, kind of doing it. And then at a certain point, they asked him like, hey, can you just like buy the business from your brother, like buy his half out?
At that point, he just couldn't keep doing it.
I don't know. He couldn't. He was showing up in all kinds of states and freaking people out, and just, he could be a real cool dude, super smart, gifted musician. I'm not kidding. Beyond belief, dude. He's very gifted, man, but he's very alcoholic, very schizophrenic. And so it's just a crazy combo. Super talented. Like, you know what a pitch pipe is? It's a little,
I'm familiar with it.
It's black on the top and silver on the bottom, and it's round, and they'll use it to tune instruments. He plays it like a harmonica.
Really?
And he could twirl it and hit the notes and like, and do it's wild. He's a really interesting dude. But anyway, they kind of were like, hey, can you buy the business? And my dad didn't really want to do it. They put pressure on him to do it. And so he did it. And so then he became that guy. So every tax season, say, January 1st to April 15th, my dad had a pretty good job because money was coming in. But after April 15th, the flow of money stopped, unless there were people that filed extensions, but that's not that much for the rest of the year. So it was feast or famine with us. It was like, hey, from January to May, we did pretty good. From June to December, it got lean. And when it got later in the year, it got really lean. So this was...
Good thing you didn't celebrate Christmas.
Good thing. Well, my dad would put my mom's wedding ring in hock every year.
Really?
To be able to afford the continuing education credits that he had to do taxes, and then he would go pay it off and get it back.
That's rough.
He did that for probably a dozen years. It's like my parents, we weren't destitute, but we definitely didn't have a lot of extra money. So we were the family that the church took up offerings for. And my dad didn't take a salary from the church ever. He never, even to this day,
Power to him.
Never took money from the church ever. In fact, and I told you this before, but I distinctly remember him and my mom paying somebody else's electricity bill in the church, and us getting our electricity turned off.
That's insane.
And so we went without it for a week.
Yeah.
So we could help somebody else. So that's the kind of person he was, whether right or wrong. That's how he was. But anyway, it was feast or famine, man. So we didn't have a car. We didn't have a refrigerator. We didn't have a freaking washing machine. I would get on my bicycle with a sack of wet laundry, and I would pedal 4 miles across town to my grandma's house, wash all the clothes, and my grandpa would feel sorry for me and put my bike in the back. He had a big Lincoln Continental, drive us home. And many times my grandparents showed up with groceries.
So this is your dad's parents?
My mom's parents.
Your mom's parents. Were they not part of?
They were.
They were part of everything.
My mom grew up in that church. She was born into it and grew up in it. But my grandpa was he was part of the generation of people that came to California during the Dust Bowl. Oklahoma, crazy. My grandma was full-blooded Italian, and they were into the church to a point. And when it became you can't do this or you can't do that, if he didn't think it was a big deal, he did what he wanted. It was just hey, he was solid. He worked for the city for a long time. He was a World War II veteran. They were very, very conservative with their money.
Yeah, you're not telling him shit.
You're not telling him shit. He was awesome, dude. My grandpa TJ was a really good dude. So they would show up with groceries, and we'd be like, oh my God, they brought 7 bags of groceries, dude. Oh, it was so good. But they take up offerings. Sometimes we'd be at church, visiting another church, not to do it just to go visit, because that's what we did. And they'd be like, oh, hey, Brother Freeman needs, he's having some hard times right now. We're going to take up an offering for him. And as a kid, it was kind of oh, dude, we're that broke that it's being announced over the pulpit. You know what I mean? That was rough, dude.
How'd that make you feel?
It made me feel like this. As soon as I could get a job, I got a job. 13, at 13, right? Yeah. I was stacking money in my pocket. And as soon as I got a taste of I can go get what I want, that was it, dude. I'm I'm fucking gonna work and get the fuck out.
So shitty feeling, but ultimately good for work ethic.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't change it. Now I wouldn't change it. Then it sucked.
Of course.
It sucked. But now it's
13, yeah.
13. But dude, I was big dogging it at 13. I was going to the arcade every day.
Secretly?
No, I just went.
Were you not supposed to?
Well, I was...
was that on the list?
Video games were newer, so the church didn't have an official, Some of the churches were anti-video games, though. I do remember that.
Yeah, I bet.
We weren't.
Some of the public back then was super anti-video game.
Yeah.
In any case, I threw you off again. So you met Stella through it.
Yeah.
And at one point, you got in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Basically had then I got call out to faith, and then
really into it. And I went pretty hard in the paint for a while. But when
to the point where at some point you were sort of destined to lead, right?
Well, yes, and they had been telling me that since I was very, very little, 5 or 6 years old. So as I got older, that message was repeated, not just from the people in my church, but people in all these other churches. Yeah. And then eventually, as I was old, like especially when I was an older teenager, then it was like, hey, this guy said this over you, and this guy's like an apostle in our group. So if he says that you're going to do this, you're going to do it. You know, so there was a lot of like, my path is already laid out for me. I'm just going to go do it. And when so I graduated from high school, like I took my high school equivalency test. Thank God I wasn't dumb. I was really smart in grade school. I didn't have a problem learning. So thank God, because I would have been totally ignorant to go into homeschool back when it was called homeschool. It wasn't independent study. It wasn't remote learning. It wasn't cool. It was, you were a fucking dork if you went to homeschool.
Yeah. I mean, that carried through to when I was in high school.
Yes. You were dorcus dominorcus, dude.
We had a couple quote homeschool kids that would come in just for the foreign languages. I took German all 4 years.
Of course you did.
It's on brand. Anyway, so I was in German all 4 years, and I would see 4 different sets of kids come in, and they were all weird.
So it was, you know,
wicked smart, but they were weird.
Yeah. You know, and I felt like my parents went to high school. My mom went to this business college for a while, but the church was like, nah, that's too much. You don't need that. So she's just cleaning houses. She broke her back at some point. She got in a car accident, and then she couldn't really work. And so my dad was trying to hustle everything, and just, there was never enough. But when I was 17, I went to community college, and I was just doing like, hey, I'm going to take all my required education work, you know?
And by the way, just to put it in perspective and like reference years, how old are you today?
I'm 46. Okay. So I started going to college in 95.
Okay.
And
I was born in 93.
My parents were supportive. Like, they wanted me to go to school as long as it didn't interfere with church.
Okay.
As long as I could go to all the services, which were like, I don't know, between 5 and say 8 or 9 a week. In
nuts.
I know, it's a lot. As long as I could do all that.
People don't go to jiu-jitsu that often.
No, people don't do anything that often. No. You know, besides jerk off.
Beat off and take a shower. Yeah. Maybe shower.
Take shits. You know, it's pretty much biological things, you know.
Eat, maybe.
So,
and by the way, was that characteristic to your parents, do you think? Like, other people in the congregation probably wouldn't be cool with that? Or?
Oh, no, we were all banging like that.
So encouraging the after the worldly school going and pursuing collegiate education?
Oh, no. Sorry. Yeah. No, that wasn't encouraged.
Okay.
Going to college.
It was particular to your parents that they were supportive of you getting an education?
There were kids that grew up in the church and did go to college.
Okay.
It wasn't like totally looked down on, but it was like, remember you're in the world, but not of the world. Remember that they're teaching you garbage there. Remember that.
Heavy, dude.
But my dad, some of the shit he said was right, though. I'm sure. He's like, all those this was like in the 90s. He's like, all those college professors are communists, and they're teaching Marxism, and they're tainting everyone's brain, and you have to be smart, and don't let them taint your brain. And like, in that regard, he probably was right.
Largely in the humanities, for sure.
Yeah.
That's blatantly apparent now.
So I had to take a religion course, and the guy that was the professor was a tax client of my dad.
Okay.
Which was interesting. So my dad knew him, Professor Zeller, Jim Zeller, and he was a Mennonite.
Okay.
And he taught this religion course. It was like world religion, Western religion, and then it was like the Eastern religions and something. I don't know. But he started drawing parallels between things, and I was kind of like, I thought that we were the only ones that came up with that. And like, I thought that, wait a minute. And I started understanding that these people that were in the people, not the priesthood or the leaders, but the people, they believed with all their heart just as much as I did. That they weren't clowns and morons and jackasses and people destined for eternal death. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that kind of had an impact on me in a way. I started changing the way I viewed people who didn't go to my church, because it very much was us and the world. Mm-hmm. And that included your family. If your family wasn't in the church, then they were considered the world. The church was your family. And so I started thinking about all the people that used to come that we loved that didn't come, and now we kind of more or less shunned them. We loved them. We said we loved them, but not, I don't know. It was tricky. So that kind of opened up a crack. And then, I got married and I had a family. We started a family young and we were both working. We both went to school. Stella probably would have pieced out sooner.
You think?
Yeah. But as I got older, they really started grooming me to take over.
So I had forgotten, based on our previous conversations, or I continue to forget that, for whatever reason, I've like made a connection of you and Stella got together and then left and then got married and had a family. Mm-mm. But you guys were married in the church.
Yeah, we raised our kids
in the church.
Almost in it, yeah.
Okay.
So we got married in the church, and actually, I think I was the last person to marry somebody from her church that wasn't in her direct church. Because her direct church ultimately got really strict and basically was like, you can't marry anyone outside of this congregation.
Can't have another Freeman incident.
We look down on it if you do it.
Dang,
like we can't
even within the same.
We can't stop you from doing it. Well, from the same overall religious group, but like, hey, it would be like if you go to Tempe, Nashville, you can only roll with people from Tempe, Nashville. You can't roll from Tempe, Decatur. That ain't cool.
Ooh,
be like that kind of a rule.
Well,
it used to be you can only roll with 10P people, no matter where they're from. As long as they're from a 10P, you're cool. But then it became like you could. So I was the last one, and the reason I was successful is my dad was a pastor, and he had a lot of respect, and all these people had known me since I was born. They knew my mom since she was a teenager. So,
and you're the prince apparent at that point.
Yes. So they didn't do it with enthusiasm, but they didn't stop it.
Okay.
So thank God, because I love Stella, and I got really lucky that I found somebody that came from that same upbringing with me and went through the process with me.
That's wild.
Understands it, because it's be really hard for somebody who didn't grow up like that.
That's wild, and she's rad on top of that. So
yeah. So when I was in my 20s, they gave me a lot more responsibility. They put me in as a minister, and then they started grooming me to ultimately take over. And, there was a point where people were coming to me with like real serious problems, wanting advice and counsel. And I was like, dude, I realized I don't know what to tell these people.
Are you about 20 here?
I'd say 25.
25.
Somebody comes to you and they go, I can't stop smoking crack, and my wife doesn't know it, and I don't know what to do.
You're like, I'm 25.
Dude, I'm 25, dude. Like, I don't know. I could tell you the basic answer, but I don't think that's going to get through to you, man. I don't think I have anything for you outside of you should talk to like a real professional, which we didn't encourage either. We're like, hey, everything you need is in the Bible. If you need help, go talk to the pastor. He'll give you direction. Especially don't go talk to a psychologist or a therapist.
Yeah,
that was if you did that was, if somebody, he's seeing a therapist, they'd be like,
he's talking to a demon.
Not good. So I started feeling like something wasn't right. And
like, how did you get in a position where these people with these really, really intense problems are asking a 25-year-old with barely life experience how to stop smoking crack?
Yeah. And I thought this is only going to get more serious. And the one thing that I was not going to be was a phony baloney. Is somebody who's up here, praising the Lord and acting the part, but really doesn't have the goods. Just like if I got to a place where I felt like I don't even know the questions, let alone the answers.
But then speak as if you do.
I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Ironically, to me, that's actually what the Lord's name in vain is.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
To me.
I couldn't do it. So somewhere in my 30s, I stepped down.
I keep forgetting you're in it that long.
Yeah, I stepped down, and it was a big deal, and I got looked at really poorly. And now I was no longer the prince of parent. I was the prodigal son. You know, I was like slipping up, and I got a lot of talking tos from people from all over the place.
Obviously, being born and raised where you're at, you're not getting away from them. Like, you hadn't left yet, so you're right down the street from everybody.
Yeah, and man, that was real hard. And we didn't. I guess, you know, we just got to a place where my heart wasn't in it, and I was going through the motions, and I really needed to make a change. But I knew it would fracture my relationship with my dad and my mom. So it was really difficult. I had a couple conversations with my dad that I just don't think he understood where I was at for whatever reason. I don't think it was for a lack of trying. I just don't think he knows what it's like to be raised that way and to come up with that, because he wasn't raised that way. He was a regular dude who was a hippie for a while, and then he met my mom, started going to church, and
found what to him is probably this huge gift.
Huge.
Yeah.
And I don't go for it.
Yeah.
Like, he
sounds like a great guy for it.
He's still part of it to this day. He still rocks it. And he's solid. And that's great. I call my dad all the time. That's awesome. I don't fault him for that. But I just don't think he understood. And so it's like, man, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this without causing a problem. So when Stella got hurt, when I accidentally blew Stella's ACL out training jiu-jitsu.
Was that you? I didn't know you did that.
So around 27, I started training jiu-jitsu. Okay. And I had to do it in secret. Okay. The whole thing was in secret. I couldn't tell anybody because martial arts was a big no-no. So it was like, you don't need to do that. God will defend you. Like, why are you doing martial arts? And I wasn't even doing it to be like self-defense. I was just doing it because I was getting fat, and I was worried that I was going to be a great big fat dude. Because my dad is like 360 and my mom was over 300 pounds. So I'm like, oh, it's in the stars, man. Yeah, the only thing you could do in our church was eat. That was the only thing that wasn't forbidden, is you could just eat. You could just fucking eat what you want. And that manifested itself a lot.
Damn.
Couldn't smoke. You can't drink. You better not touch alcohol.
Really?
Oh, serious no-no.
Even sacrament? Or was there not that?
No, we didn't do that.
Okay.
Communion is daily communion with the Lord.
Oh,
it's not
doing. It's not the wafer with the. Yeah, okay.
Eating his flesh is awesome. Reading the Bible and incorporating it into your life and living it. And drinking his blood is praying in the Spirit and communing with God.
Okay, so that's metaphorical.
That's how
everything else is literal.
Yeah. Now there was a couple. I know. I can never tell which one either.
Hey, man.
You just had to know.
Yeah,
you know.
I get you.
There was a couple churches that literally did and we kind of were like, oh,
weirdos.
Yeah, you guys are slipping. So anyway,
you started it for fitness.
When I started it for fitness, got really into it, kept it super secret, started making friends outside of church, which I never ever had. So now I had like a group of people that I trusted to an extent. I was comfortable with them, and they
probably with a myriad of different beliefs. And they weren't all terrible people, and I was having a good time doing jiu-jitsu. And so I started doing that more and more, and my commitment to the church started waning, and it became obvious. And then eventually Stella had that injury, and so she was that you had nothing to do with.
She was going to have to be out for a while, right? And so we're like, hey, probably not going to see us for a couple of weeks because she's pretty hurt. She can't do much, and we got 2 kids, and they were younger. And then we just never went back. And then my mom fell incredibly ill.
You Irish goodbye'd the church?
We Irish goodbye'd the church. And this is what made it so difficult. My mom became gravely ill, was on life support machines for a long time, and my dad moved in with us.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was just like, man, this is hard. This is very tension filled. And then my mom passed. So it was like, oh my God. Like, one is I wasn't expecting that. That was kind of, she wasn't in great health, but we weren't expecting that. Yeah. it was crazy, man.
So I noticed after Mariah died that a few of the relationships that I had with different friends that were not necessarily strained, but they weren't strong, had gotten a little stronger because we'd put away bullshit, some of which I didn't even know was there. Did any of that kind of thing happen with your old man after that? Because I'm sure it was tense dealing with making sure that she got what she needed when she was here, and like obviously trying to make it better or get her better. But then after her passing, was it? Because like you said, you talk to him all the time now, so I assume somewhere the healing happened. I just didn't know if it would be right after that. I've noticed that unfortunately and fortunately, tragedy does bring some people together.
I would say, I don't know. I think my sister and I and my dad were all close at a certain level, like a life closeness, like a human closeness. Like, hey, even if we believe different things, like if you're in a jam, I'm going to help you. You know, so there was that, and that was always automatic. But I don't think it fixed anything between us and me leaving the church.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever been fixed.
Really?
I've just accepted it that that's a big crevice, and I have had to build a bridge over that. The whole bridge.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I could see why you would have to be in that position.
I had to build the whole bridge because I wanted to have a better relationship with my dad. So I was willing to do it, you know, and I think it's okay now, but I know that there's things that he doesn't agree with and that he's unhappy with. I know that, but you know what? There's things about him that I don't agree with and that I'm not happy with, but
you're two different human beings. That's going to happen.
But overall, it's a pretty solid dude. So
yeah,
you know,
I can relate to much of that in wildly different ways, but
yeah,
you know, it's a lot of that comes from my misunderstanding of who my dad was and is.
Right.
And like, I just saw him as in one way for so long that I didn't realize he's also a dynamic person that thinks and feels the way he did. And on top of that, he was completely honest with me throughout life about what he thinks. Yeah. And I chose to take it a certain way for a long time. And now I had to rebuild part of a bridge that he never destroyed. It was my interpretation that fucked it up. So for different reasons, I can relate to that bridge building.
So that was tricky. With the other folks that I knew from the church, and some I knew for my whole life, and I was considered them friends, like very good friends. It didn't get better. When my mom, when we didn't have a funeral, but we had a memorial service for her, and it was at the church. My mom was very integrated into the church, and everybody was there. There were people that got up over the pulpit to speak and like called me out in front of the whole group of people that were there during my mom's memorial service to make sure I knew I wasn't living right and I needed to change my life. And it's like, dude, this is my mom's memorial service. You're so out of line right now, but I'm not going to say anything because it's my mom's memorial service, you jackass. Like, what are you doing?
As much as you want to swing on somebody, it would just make it worse.
Do it. Yeah, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do that anyway. But
well, sure, but I don't know how I would not react positively to that.
It's made it for me now that I could barely go into a church building, like actually go and sit in a church service. I just don't think I can do it. Really difficult for me to do.
And it's probably, like, I think we've mentioned this before, it's probably not even to do with what's going on given that service. It's just all the history.
It's just everything. Yeah. It's everything that I was raised to believe about it, and it's everything that I experienced doing it. I'm just like, I'm not anti-God. I'm just not interested in going to a church on a regular basis. I'm just not.
I get that.
So, yeah, I don't know, but whatevs. It's all good, dog. It's all good, dog. Look how I turned out, man. I'm good.
You're all right.
But yeah, dude. So, so we left and dude, it was real hard. Had to make new friends. And we were kind of naive in that we took everybody in, I mean, I think I told you there was a dude that we had come to our house for dinner and come to social events who was a friend of somebody who was in the church, and this person was kind of going to the church off and on, and we were trying to get his life right, and we're trying to help him. This dude ended up murdering his girlfriend, who was also at our house, and we knew, like 6 months later. And I'm like, dude, we had a murderer in the house with our kids and my wife, and we just like didn't think twice about doing it. And it really bothered me. It's like, man, this is crazy.
Does that shape you up at that point a little bit?
It shaped me up, but the problem is we were raised to just open up to everybody, do everything for everybody that you possibly can. Not that that's a terrible thing, but when we started making friends, you know, outside of the church
that didn't live that way also,
it was pretty tricky.
Yeah.
It was pretty tricky. Some people were really awesome people, and I'm still friends with them. And some people turned out to be super dirtbags.
Yeah,
but
I mean, the problem with something like jiu-jitsu is like,
yeah,
you know, it's everybody's great while you're in here, and everybody trusts each other when you're rolling, with exceptions. But you meet all kinds.
Yeah. So that was difficult for me to figure out and navigate, and difficult for Stella too. It's like, damn.
Was jiu-jitsu the primary switch? It's like you went from church to jiu-jitsu, and there wasn't a whole lot of other activities except maybe with kids' school and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
pretty much. For you, that was like your new social output.
I think that I am so used to having a rigid schedule and structure with things that subconsciously probably jiu-jitsu just replaced it. And it was rigid and hard. There's no way I was going to do an easy martial art like Taekwondo. I'm not talking shit about Taekwondo, but I wasn't going to do just something that I wanted. Everything I did, I was like, I want the real shit.
You want to suffer?
I want the secret truth. I want to know I want to know like what's the real thing, you know, want to suffer. So
yeah,
jiu-jitsu was like,
well,
perfect.
On your podcast, Inside BJJ, you've told a bunch of stories about different aspects of getting it, why that was the one that interested you, and what, you know, from watching the first UFCs, the classic, I thought he had ropes in his gi kind of deal. Like that's always been very funny.
I still suspect that Hoist Gracie was using an implement of some kind.
He could have been.
Yeah.
So that replaces your social output, gives you a newfound sort of, I would guess, faith in something, maybe.
Yeah.
Because you're dropping. Were you angry at a lot of the religion after you're leaving?
Yeah,
that's pretty common.
I was pretty angry for a while. I think angry at my mom and dad. I was angry that my mom died, and I did have some closure with her, but the last couple years of her life, I felt like her and I didn't see eye to eye on very much, and we didn't get along as well as I would have liked to, you know? So that was hard to deal with and to kind of reconcile. And then I was angry that my parents were broke. They lost their house. My dad had given everything to this religion, and it just seemed like there was a rotating cast of takers who just kept showing up with their hands out because they always needed help. Yeah. The same thing though, it's like, hey, I can't stop doing crack, which means I can't pay my bills because I'm spending it on crack, which means I need you to pay my bill. And my dad would do it.
Yeah. That's right.
And it's like, man, and then my dad like doesn't have, lives in a shithole, doesn't have money to take care of himself.
But ostensibly did the right thing as far as he's concerned.
Yeah. I remember I went down to do, I think it was Pans. I don't think it was Worlds. Maybe it was Worlds at Brown. I think it was Pans. I was a brown belt, and I went down with one of my buddies, and it was when my mom was really sick, and my dad was kind of like, my sister and I kind of realized like mom's not coming back. You know, my dad was not thinking that way at all. He was thinking that they were going to find a way to fix it. And I was talking to him on the phone, and then he told me something that somebody in the church did, and I just like lost it. I just said a bunch of crazy stuff. Probably true, but you know, I was pretty upset. I'm not upset anymore. I'm not angry. It's just like my parents did what they thought was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And, you know,
to me, it sounds like they did.
They brought me into the world. They took care of me. Like they didn't owe anything to me in terms of like, we got to find the perfect thing for this kid and make his life perfect. That doesn't exist anyway. And if you do that, you end up fucking your kids up.
Yeah. And I mean, from what you've said, at least to me in an auxiliary capacity at the least, they ended up in hindsight being the ones that supported some of the things that led to you discovering your own shit.
Yeah, for real.
Especially the education afterwards.
Yeah.
Like if they had been really hardcore against that and, you know, that had been their point of view while you found that for yourself, I think there would at least be justifiable resentment for that.
Yeah, I was upset for a while because I had the opportunity to go to better schools. I had really good grades. I didn't have trouble in school, but they're just like, you can't move. You can't go anywhere.
Because it would interfere.
Look, ultimately it was on me. I could have did whatever the fuck I wanted.
Yeah.
You know, I was
at the time
19 years old. I could have just been like, yo, I'm going to go. But that means you're going to go, and now there's going to be a huge issue between you and your parents, and all the people that you grew up with, the only social network you know, they're going to shun you. So it's like, you can do it, but good luck. So it was hard. I remember when I was going to junior college, I got an internship at Hewlett Packard, and it was Hewlett Packard in Palo Alto, which is to Stockton is like probably an hour and a half with no traffic.
So for me, that's like DC to Richmond. That's nothing.
With traffic, it's 3 hours easy.
DC to Richmond.
Okay. And you got to go across either the San Mateo or the Dumbarton Bridge, which is fucking bananas. Okay. So I had this internship, and I had a friend that lived in Fremont, which is right on the other side of the bridge from Palo Alto. It's really close. So then you have like a 30-minute drive. Okay. And he's like, hey, you could crash here during the summer. You could stay here. Makes it easier. And I'm like, oh, that'd be awesome. So
to support that internship?
Yeah. He's like, that way you don't got to drive so far. And so I'm like, hey, I was talking to my parents, like, I think I'm going to move in with so-and-so over the summer. I got this really great opportunity. And they're like, you better be in church every freaking time we have church. So yeah, you can go, but we expect you to drive from Palo Alto to Stockton on our church nights. And then I would turn around after church and drive back to Fremont, which is
3 hours one way, hour and a half the other.
Yes.
Dude.
So a Tuesday night, I would get off work at 5. I would drive to church. I get to church at 8. Church would get out at 9:30. I'd get in my car and drive back to Fremont, get home at 11, go to bed, get up, go to work. Then I'd do the same thing on Friday. Friday was worse because Friday afternoon traffic was just
awful.
Yeah. And, usually I would stay in Stockton over the weekend because we had church on Sunday. And we also had a men's meeting on Saturday that I was expected to be at. So it was a lot, man. It was a lot. But I did it. It's all that I knew, so I just fucking did it. I could eat a shit sandwich. That's my superpower.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, I don't know, man. I think you can use everything ultimately for your good.
I hope so.
You can.
Yeah.
If you try long enough, you can turn everything into an asset. But it's not easy.
I've had small successes with that, and it's despite what the worst part of myself says.
Yeah.
I have the evidence of those small successes so far. So that inspires me to move forward with that versus being content to just lay in bed and think of that, the alternative.
Yeah. I think it's necessary if you're gonna continue to grow, because there's gonna be pain. And the part of being mortal means there's shit that's out of your control, man. Mm-hmm. It's just straight up. There's a lot that, probably 80% of our life we can influence in a pretty big way.
And there's 20% of
shit.
Agony.
Dude, lightning comes out of the sky, strikes people in the head sometimes. There's shit you could do about it, dog.
Yeah.
Like, the world's an imperfect place, and sometimes You know, when the music stops, you don't got a chair.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
It does.
But you can't predict it and you can't safeguard against it. So all you can do is live a really good life and accept that those things are going to happen. And when they happen, you try not to let them kill you. I don't know any other way to do it.
No, I guess, yeah.
You know, there's no arriving. It's like, you know, you can have this idea that if I can get X, Y, Z, everything's going to be perfect. You can get X, Y, Z, and then you can be diagnosed with terminal cancer, or something can happen to your spouse, or something can happen to your kids, or something can happen. You can have a flood or a tornado that destroys your home. That, like, there's just, that's
that XYZ life, that you built is done now.
It's done, dude.
Got to figure out another ABC or whatever.
I heard a really good quote on a podcast, and I think I said it, but I'm going to say it here too. I can't remember dude's name. I apologize. He was on a friend of mine's show, and he said, "Trust the process, not the product." And I really like that, because the product is the process can create n number of products, right? But that product cannot exist without the process. So your XYZ, that's your product.
And that product is also already in its end state.
That's it.
That's done now.
And so you get XYZ, you can't put your trust in XYZ. You got to put your trust in what got you to XYZ. That's the treasure.
Yeah.
That's the treasure.
That makes a lot of sense. So when did you figure that out, do you think?
That right there, just like 3 days ago.
Not the quote, but relying on your sense of discipline and that rigidity that you got as you grew up, that was either, whether you knew it or not, ingrained in you. Starting work at 13 and then not switching over from work, but continuing education, monitoring and maintaining that crazy schedule of that internship versus dealing with church at the time and then still banging with jiu-jitsu afterwards.
Yeah.
When did that rigidity turn into, so we know when the full break was, you just ended up not going.
Yeah.
Your mother passes, still with the gym. And at what point do you decide to, because I know you competed throughout.
Yeah.
But what point did you decide, I love this enough that I'm going to do this myself and I'm going to teach?
I don't think I think that decision was made for me.
You think?
A little bit. Yeah. Cause what happened was, when I was a blue belt, I fantasized about, like, I wonder what it's like to, like, have a jiu-jitsu gym. But it seems so far away. Like, I'm never going to get a black belt. I suck. Yeah. And
that's where I'm at, by the way.
I know. No. What happened was, the guys I trained with, they wanted to have a kids program. I don't even know why. They're like, we just want to say that we have a kids program. We think it'll, like, make the image of the gym look better. Oh. And maybe we can get like their parents to train. Their attitude was, we don't have kids. You're the only one that has a kid. I had Noah at the time. He was 5. And we don't want to teach kids. We don't want anything to do with kids at all. We hate kids. But we think you'd be okay with
Great guys to have a kids program.
Yeah. So we want you to teach the class. And the deal was, you could teach what you want to teach, promote them when you want to promote them, however you want to charge what you want to charge, give the gym 30% of whatever you make each month. So I'm enterprising. I'm like, okay, like, you know, and I saw 2 opportunities. One is I thought, man, there could be an opportunity to make a little side money, which would be nice. And then there's an opportunity now for me to get my son into jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
And now I'm spending time with my son doing a thing that I love, and it's easier to sell to the wife.
Gnarly.
It's dad's not gone 3 nights a week training jiu-jitsu. Dad's with Noah. And they're doing jiu-jitsu, but they're together.
Yeah, quality time.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So I started teaching as a blue belt probably in 2010. And Noah was my first student. And then I had one other student, which was a friend of his. So I had 2 students. I remember the first class. I taught them technical stand-up. And then, I don't know, like after a couple of months, I had like 4 or 5 students. And I probably had under 10 students for a few months. I wasn't like marketing, promote. I wasn't doing I was literally not doing any of that. I was just working my job, training jiu-jitsu and teaching the kids class twice.
But again, 2010, like how much of that could you have done other than
the advertising?
Craigslist? Was that even around?
It was stronger than what it is now, probably. It was more used. But it wasn't.
Certainly no Facebook, Instagram, anything like that.
No, not that infrastructure.
Not to that capacity.
No, not the advertising stuff we can do now. And then it grew. And then after like the second year, I had like 50 kids in there.
That's crazy.
And by the end, I had a pretty deep roster. There was a time when I was making like $2,500 a month in like side money just in my pocket after giving the gym 30%. Mm-hmm. It was just from all these fucking kids. And I realized that I liked doing it and that I was pretty good at it and it was rewarding. And
had you gone from blue to purple in that time?
Yeah, I'd gone from blue to purple. And I was at the gym and I had offered to teach adult classes and they're kind of like, we'll see. The instructor was kind of like, Chuck was there and Ernest was there. You know, they had their own tension between them, which made it hard for me to navigate because I was friends with both of them. But, you know, it was kind of like, hey, we're picky. We're going to have high standards. Chuck was always very supportive of me. He probably would have, I think Ernest might have had more reservations. But ultimately, they were down with it. And what happened was one of our main training partners, Bobby Lama, what's up, Bobby? He had to move to Wisconsin out of nowhere. And he was one of the main instructors. And it left this huge gap in the schedule that nobody could cover. And so they're like, hey, you want a chance to teach? They're like, we need all these classes covered. And I talked to Stella about it and I said, hey, you know, I'm going to teach all these classes for free for probably a while. And this is my internship into teaching. I'm just looking at it as an opportunity for me to drive the car, learn how to drive the car. I don't expect to be paid and I'm just doing this for experience. And if you're down with it, this is what I think I want to do because I think there's potential for me in the future to have a gym. And this is a great opportunity to get live practice with students. So I did it. I was teaching a ton, man, like a lot of classes. And then I left the school. So some bullshit happened, drama.
Yeah.
I jumped out.
At that point, you had a brown belt and then moved to 10th Planet?
No, I was a 4-stripe brown belt when I left.
Yeah.
Like who leaves at 4-stripe brown?
Yeah.
Basically going to get a black belt eventually, right? No, I opened a gym with another partner, another training partner who used to train there as well, called Stockton Jiu-Jitsu. So Stockton Jiu-Jitsu existed in a very small format. And then when we partnered up, kind of blew it up.
And you had started your podcast around this time too, right?
I started my podcast while I was still going to church.
Oh, that's right. You told me you had to kind of hide it.
So those first, I don't know how many episodes, but maybe those first 2 years of episodes, I was still going to church, doing the podcast on the DL, not telling anyone in the church that I was doing a podcast. And the shit we were talking about was wild.
I know.
But in the early days, I was much more conservative. Yeah. I never swore. I didn't talk about drugs. I was very like buttoned up because I was constantly worried that Big Brother was going to fucking hear it and I was going to get called on the carpet for it. Oh. I mean, dude, I was paranoid that was going to happen. Because that's the other side of being in a very unique religious group.
Very much a cloister.
Is that there is like an underbelly information network of people who snitch on people.
Yeah. There has to be.
And then the news travels up and then boom. Now
a lot of the times you're rewarded for that information.
Daddy passed. Yeah. Now you're a pet. You did the right thing.
You did the right thing.
Daddy pastor guy now gets up in church and rebukes you in front of everybody for what you did. Yeah.
That's
sucks.
I've forgotten you'd done that.
Sucks. So I was just, dude, I was balling. I was just like, what the fuck am I doing, man? That was hard, man. Oh, that was a hard time in my life. I am very good at making transitions now, though. Like understanding.
I hope so, because, man, you've had to make a bunch.
What it's like to to have your feet on what it's like to come up to the fence, step over it, and live while you're stepping over the fence. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And then get to the other side. Fuck. Yeah, it's fun stuff. So I started teaching, doing gyms. Like in 2010, I started teaching. In 2016, I opened the first Stockton Jiu-Jitsu gym that I had been involved in.
And what was the introduction to 10P?
That was, I met Eddie probably in 2012.
Okay.
And he was a guest on the podcast, and I was going down to all these jiu-jitsu tournaments in Southern California and covering them for the podcast, just kind of like just doing it. Nobody was asking me to do it. I was setting up all my equipment and so bananas, interviewing people. I met Eddie that way. And then one day he just kind of randomly texted me and he's like, hey, do you want to do a preview for the next EBI? I'll send you the card. Like, don't tell anybody. And then you guys can record a preview, send me the audio preview, and then I'll have my guy put video on it. So they're on YouTube. You can find them on the EBI channel. I started doing that, and I just got to know him that way. I went on his podcast once, right near the end of his original podcast.
Yeah.
I crept in the door at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
I had all these expectations for how it was going to be, and it was just like a regular podcast. You know, it wasn't like there was another lady on at the same time who was like a sex expert, and it kind of like altered the flow of it.
Yeah, Eddie and Sam Tripoli were doing wild shit with podcasts back then. I mean, they still are, but back then they were doing some wild shit.
But overall, it was fun, and I had started doing a lot of no-gi jiu-jitsu at Brown Belt. Carl Sims, he runs Proving Grounds Invitational up in Utah.
We spoke to him on the podcast.
Yeah.
Lovely dude.
He started the first one. He had contacted me through the podcast. He came on the show, and then he invited me to have a fight on the card. So I'm like, okay, I did it, but I was only training in the gi up to that point. Mm-hmm. So I took the gi off. I started doing no gi. Had a rough time with it. Didn't do well at the tournament, but just decided, like, if I'm going to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I got to know how to do this shit without the jacket and the pants. Like, this is embarrassing. So I started doing both for a long time. When we opened Stockton Jiu-Jitsu, it was a 50-50 split. We were like one of the only places doing it then too.
At all, or 50-50?
Doing even 50-50.
Oh, wow.
We were doing, it would be like Monday night gi, Tuesday night no gi, Wednesday night gi, Thursday night no gi, Friday night gi, Saturday no gi. We just alternated days every day. And so I started training a lot more no-gi. I started training more with 10th Planet schools whenever I could. Mm-hmm. And I started developing relationships with the people at 10th Planets. And I realized...
Is that how you first encountered Coach Casey?
I encountered Coach Casey covering EBI.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think Stella might have met him first because he had his daughter with him, Abby, who's an adult now, but she was a kid then. And Stella's always been really good at hitting it off with like kids, especially teens. Like she taught for 20 years, so she's just knows how to make that connection. And everyone just hit it off. And then Casey, when I first was going to leave the gym I was at originally, I called Casey and I got some advice from him, and he just became for me, is like, I trust him a lot, you know? And so, I was friends with everybody in 10th Planet, and the opportunity came up for me to open my own gym. And I thought, man, dude, I don't want to do this under any other, I want to be part of 10th Planet. I want to be part of that family. I want to be part of that team. Those guys are awesome. I love the way I feel when I go train with them. I love the way Eddie Bravo treats people. And I'm not talking about like the stuff you see on the camera. I'm talking about like the way he deals with things and that you're working with him on. It's always been fair. It's always been above board. It's always been 100% open and honest. And it was just refreshing, man. It's like, dude, I don't think I want to train on another like gi team that's super into IBJJF and is super duper Brazilianed out. It's like, I just didn't want to do it, man.
I can understand why you would have some trepidation about rigidity.
Dude, big time. And I'm super like don't want to be in some school where they're all some fucking masterful leader is bossing everybody around all day. I just like, I can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, that trade is essentially like some hardcore Catholics for, 10p being Gnostics, essentially,
right.
Just believing, everything's open to interpretation and everything's free flowing and all that.
So I jumped to, and I called Eddie, said, hey, I have the opportunity to do this, but look, no matter what, we're going to be friends. I'm going to open a gym no matter what, but I think it'd be awesome to open a 10th Planet gym. I really do. And I talked to Casey about it, and Eddie called Casey, and Casey was like, dude, we got like 100%. I believe in what he's doing. To that point, I had gotten to know Casey better. Mm-hmm. And I had a rough breakup at Stockton Jiu-Jitsu. Like, it was really good until it wasn't good. Then it was really bad. And I've learned that when things happen on the business side or even with students, I try really hard not to make it too public and make a big deal and go on social media and drag everything around. It's just not my style, dude. I don't think it works. I think cool. It leaves a bad image of you in people's minds, and it leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. So I just didn't do any of that. When I left that school, I just left, and I didn't really talk a bunch of shit. But that's not how the other side treated me, So which is unfortunate, but not like, that's just how it is, So when I opened 10th Planet Stockton, Eddie was like, yeah, dude. He's like, I think a 10th Planet Stockton is iconic. He's like, that's fucking badass. So, because I told him, like, if you don't think it's a good idea, just please, like, do not spare my feelings, because I do not want to come into a situation where I'm not wanted.
Yeah.
Like, dude,
Especially with how you feel about the organization and Eddie, too.
Yeah. A lot of respect for Eddie, dude. I think Eddie's a legend. I think Eddie deserves a red belt. I think when it's all said and done, and maybe it's going to take 100 years from now, they're going to look back and go, that fucking guy changed the game forever.
Yeah.
Forever. So anyway, Eddie was like, yeah, but it's not going to be easy. And you're a black belt in the gi, but you're not a black belt in 10th Planet. It's going to take some time. Don't be in a rush. Just like get it going and like support and just learn. So that's what I did. It's like, okay, as soon as we started it up, I reached out to all the 10th Planets in Northern California, started visiting them, anything I could do to big them up, support them, promote them, help. Like, I just was really careful about not stepping in front of anybody, because I felt like Eddie was gracious to me and gave me a gift that he didn't have to give me.
Yeah.
Because there's was already a line of people ahead of me. Now maybe they didn't have the resources, or were not in the right location, or didn't have the right setup to immediately do it.
Yeah. And ultimately it's up to Eddie.
Ultimately it is. It just so happens that I was ready to do it. So,
well, like you said, I'm doing this one way or another, but I would love it if we could go this way.
Yeah.
I'm ready to do this now, but I would love it to be this way.
Yes. And I think there's a little bit of, in the 10th Planet family, a little bit of like, hey, these newcomers jump in because they want to bite on the brand and they like all the branding and the marketing, and, they think it's just a way to make money. They weren't suffering with us back when nobody liked us and everyone hated us. And I understand why they would feel that way. I didn't get into it because I thought I was going to make a bunch of money. If I really wanted to make a bunch of money, I would have just stayed in software engineering, to be honest with you, but I did it because I was actually very aware of the mistreatment of 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu by the rest of the Jiu-Jitsu world. Like, real early on, I heard people talk about Eddie, and I'm like, who's this guy? And I started reading and like learning, and I was already skeptical of everything already. And so instead of being skeptical of him, my brain works like this. If everybody or a lot of people hate this guy, maybe this guy's doing something right. Like why do they hate this guy? Like, what did he kill a child? Did he like, what is he doing? You know what I mean? And the more I learned about him, I'm like, this dude's cool. Like, he's not doing anything. He's just not doing it the way they're doing it.
Fucking iconoclast.
So I fucking loved it. I loved him. I thought 10th Planet was dope. I used to go to the message boards and like just read and follow anything I could follow on it. So I was already a fan of the heritage of 10th Planet. I believed in that, you know, and I was an outsider in life already as a fucking weirdo. So 10th Planet, I felt like that was the first place where I'm like, oh, I can fit in here. I can have a spot here and I could be who I am. And there's space for me. And I didn't feel that way everywhere else. So,
that's true across the board with 10th Planet.
Yeah, it is.
It's crazy.
So I started and I'm just like, dude, I don't want to fuck it up. I don't want to get in the way. I just want to help everybody. And I'm pretty much still on that track, you know?
You get 2 now.
Which was unplanned for. Moved to Nashville during the pandemic and I called Eddie and I'm like, the condition I made with Stella was like, yeah, hey guy. I said, hey, if we move, like, you know, I got to open a gym. I'm going to be training all the time anyway. This is a great opportunity. Like, I think I should do it if I could do it. And I think Stella was in a place where she would agree to anything as long as we moved.
That's a good place to have her.
So I had a little leverage.
Whatever you want. Let's get out of here.
And so I called Eddie. I'm like, Eddie, thinking about moving. And once again, Eddie's like, man, I would never stand in your way for trying to improve your family's life. And California had lost its goddamn mind, you know. And he was thinking about moving too.
He was talking about Florida for a little while.
Yes. So
I think I don't want to give up anything, but I think he already settled that and figured that out for himself too.
Yeah. But everyone was kind of like, eh. And so he's like, hey, you do what you got to do. I'm behind you. I'll support you. So yeah, I did it. And I, you know, same thing. I come out here and same thing happened in Stockton. I opened up 10th Planet and people came to see me who I'd never met before. I didn't even know who they were. And they said, I was going to open a 10th Planet gym in Stockton. And I'm like, I don't even know who you are. Like, I'm sorry if you feel any kind of way towards me, but I had no clue. And the same thing happened out here from multiple sources. You know, it happened. It's like, how would I know? I asked Eddie because he's the dude. And he said, nobody has it. It's yours.
Yeah, theoretically, people would have said, hey, Eddie, I'm thinking about doing this before you had, that he would know of.
You know, but I'm sensitive to that. I'm not, you know.
Of course.
I'm trying to do right by 10th Planet. It's awesome.
It is.
All the good shit, you know, has come from me just putting myself out there and trying stuff. So
making those right decisions.
I guess I think
the meaningful ones anyway.
I think the rigidity, when I started to realize that the process was more important than the product, was after I had gone through home study and pretty much taught myself. My parents were not like, let me check your work and it was just me doing it, and got through college. I started a software company in my early 20s with a friend that didn't quite make it. But I got some experience under my belt and I just learned to trust myself that I could do things. I knew that I could do stuff. Like, hey, I could put a plan together and I could do stuff. And, you know, whether it was going to be successful or not, who knows? But I knew that you had to like master that doing stuff first before you were going to get success. I learned this idea early on, that success doesn't happen in like one shot. You got to get really good at putting the shots up, and then eventually you start making baskets. If your whole plan is you're going to perfectly build this perfect plan and you're going to execute it perfectly and you're going to have the perfect end result the very first time, that's good luck, dude.
You reinforcing that not only as a friend and talking about it with me, knowing what's going on with me, and including me in the things that you have been working hard for and lucky enough to do, as well as reinforcing it with just being on the mats every day, has led me to do more of this without needing that, oh, it has to be this way, Like I'm losing rigidity.
Yeah.
A perceived need for rigidity and perfection because of conversations with you and being with you.
Yeah.
to do this kind of thing, to give this a try.
I think there's this saying that the perfect is the enemy of the good. There's like an 80% effort you got to put in to get that extra little piece that makes it perfect. And in most contexts, it's not necessary. If it's rocket science, then yeah, it's necessary. If it's life support systems, then yeah, it's necessary. If it's launching a new podcast or starting a new thing from scratch or putting yourself out there in a new way, then you got to kind of accept that, like, there's going to be failures in there. There's going to be mistakes. It's all part of learning it. And it's like, once you get in enough reps, then you start refining and getting better. And I don't know. I think that's the only way to do it. I mean, there probably are other ways to do it. That's the way I know how to do it.
Where do you think failure comes into that?
Well, failure is feedback. So, one of the things that was driven in me real early on from the software engineering discipline was this idea of failing fast and failing often, which is like, hey, you write some code, don't write 6 months worth of code and then turn it over for testing, because it's going to be riddled with issues. You're going to have to go back and figure out all these problems. And you may have built some giant infrastructure on a false premise somewhere that's going to pull it all down. So it's better is like every time you have a little slice of functionality, throw it over the fence and let them find problems with it. You get that feedback loop going and you're able to make faster corrections on the fly. And in the beginning, it feels like your progress is slowed down, but it's not. It's one of those like going slower to move faster kind of things, I think.
You ultimately haven't lost. You don't feel like you lost a lot either.
No, you don't. I think what's hard is detaching the outcome from the identity. Right?
Makes sense.
It's hard to go, this idea failed versus I failed, because we have a strong connection to our ideas.
We often put ourselves in that too.
Yeah.
So if you lose that, you feel like you're losing yourself.
Lost yourself.
Or at least a piece of you.
Yeah. And it's like, it's been helpful to me to be able to step back and go, well, there's some things that I just can't learn without falling off the bike. Like, I'm going to fall off before I learn how to write it. And that's part of learning how to write it.
Yeah.
That's not a mistake. It's not embarrassing. That's like actually part of what you're doing. Once I kind of accepted that, then I was like, okay, I think I can do it. Moving was hard. Moving out here was hard, like from a tactical standpoint, because I had to take account of all my physical bullshit, like all my stuff, all the stuff that I own.
A lifetime at that point.
Lifetime of stuff.
In that spot.
What's going to go, what's going to stay. And then, it was financially like, dude, I got a business in Stockton. I got a house in Stockton. I'm going to sell the house. I'm going to pack up all my shit, move it across the country. I'm going to open a new business out there. My wife's going to quit her job. I'm going to start another full-time job, a new full-time position, same company, but a full-time position. And we're going to be paying twice as much as what we paid for our rent. And I'm the only one working. We have this much money in the bank. We have this much from the house sale, but that money has to be used to eventually get a new house, but we're not sure where we want to live exactly. So we're going to,
having only ever visited here and never lived here. Yeah.
So
for no frame of reference.
I had all these plans and calculations in a bunch of different scenarios laid out. Like, if this happens, if this happens, if this happens. And I went through those things so many times just to make sure I knew that I wouldn't get it perfect, but what I didn't want to do is miss something big.
I get that.
For me, I felt like that would be unacceptable to do this with my family. And then I forgot about some major piece that like I didn't accommodate for, and now it's going to fuck us up. Being able to pull that off, and I'm not going to lie, like our house sale fell through on the 10-day move out here.
Jesus.
And I'm like, okay, I need that money. Like if I don't have that money, I'm going to be fucked.
Yeah.
And there were thoughts in my head like, what am I doing? Like, what if I majorly fuck up and we're totally like, we don't have enough money to pay for anything.
Yeah, it's not just you.
Not just
it's
me.
okay if you fuck up.
Right.
I mean, that it sucks to eat that kind of shit, but it's just me, right? But if it's Mrs. and 2 kids, all of our stuff.
Right.
I can't imagine, man.
So, but it worked. And
yes,
all the disaster scenarios in my head, none of those things happened. Mostly it worked out kind of like we thought it was. Not exactly, but more or less.
For me, I find that, and I can probably think of examples of this, but it's not necessary, but I'll find myself not that I'm missing some huge problem that I just haven't thought of or overanalyzed to the point of redundancy or whatever. I'll be in a state of paralysis for thinking I'm about to miss other opportunities, even if one is in front of me. And I end up not taking any because I'm worried that, well, if I do this, I might miss what I think might be coming here. And then it's just standstill. And I've done that a lot. I've worked really hard to change that. But
it's hard.
I can identify with that moment of like, before I take this step, what am I missing?
Opportunity cost is real. And a lot of people a lot of people only think about what's ahead of them. Mm-hmm. They don't think about the alternatives, but I'm
almost always alternatives. But what if the sun explodes?
I'm very much like, I talked to, I guess like a therapist, and I was explaining.
I have to shun you now.
Yeah. I was explaining some things to them, and they said, oh, you catastrophize scenarios in your head. So whenever you make a plan to do something like, hey, we're going to make a trip to Spain. Mm-hmm. All right. Most people start thinking about all the cool shit they're going to do in Spain.
Yeah.
I start thinking about what can go wrong in the trip to Spain. What if we get there and something happens and then they shut all the flights down and we can't get back home? What's the plan?
Yeah.
What happens if we lose our passports? What happens if while we're gone there's an emergency back home? It's like my brain goes there, but that's so frustrating to deal with a human being.
Because you can't enjoy Spain.
I can't enjoy Spain. And that's actually been a very big problem of mine, is that I have a hard time enjoying something and not being a little bit uptight about it, even in the moment, going like, what's going on with this person? Is everything okay with them? Did anybody see where so-and-so went? It's like, dude, calm down, man. Like, just fucking relax. Everything. So to me, you ain't God. You don't got to take care of everything.
No, see, so I like this playing against itself. Because what I'm hearing anyway is my guess is that an abandonment of an overall all-consuming rigidity has led you to rely on a complete individual rigidity.
Yeah.
And so if you can't enjoy Spain, then it sounds like it's encroaching a little bit too much. But then again, like, I'm sure there are things that have happened where you're like, no, I got it. I already thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, I think that there was...
And that's like false positive towards it.
There was a certain amount of insecurity or lack of security as a kid growing up, knowing that like my parents didn't have very much. And that was like, I know there were 2 things I said, like, I'm always going to have money and I'm always going to have transportation, because those were 2 big things. And even to this day, in my head, going to the grocery store and bringing home 5 bags of groceries, I feel proud. I stock that fridge, and then I open it up and I look at it and I look at everything.
Fucking, I did that.
That beverage fridge that we have, that's just for beverages, and in the house, I keep that thing like stocked full, because in my brain growing up, somebody who had a beverage fridge was like, you fucking made it, dude. Yeah. You did it. So I look at that thing and I'm like, you're doing good.
It's not even the main fridge.
No.
It's just shit I like. It's
my secondary fridge.
It's too, the other fridge is too full. We need
for $200, anybody can have one.
But most college kids have it in their dorm.
Right.
And it's full of beers.
But damn, it makes me feel good.
Hell yeah.
So I think some of my life I have lived around that. I do not want to be derelict. I don't want to be that. But I realize that can be a hindrance. because then I'll stay with things forever. Like when I made the decision to quit my job and teach jiu-jitsu full time, the 1 year before the pandemic, I wrestled with that for a while.
Yeah, what if a pandemic happens and you're fucked?
But that's what happened.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Listen, man, when the pandemic happened,
It sucks that happened.
and they said we're going to close 2 weeks to slow the curve, I knew. Dude, you could ask Stella. Not that you don't believe me, but I told her it's not going to be 2 weeks. It's going to be 2 years. This shit's going to go on forever. I remember I got drunk and cried on my front porch. And my wife is like, hey, you're going to have to fucking deal with it, dude. You're not the only one going through it.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I quit my fucking job.
Yeah.
You know, and now we got to close this. But
Well, half the world got told you don't have a job anymore.
I know.
Yeah.
And Coach Casey told me, he said, I called him that night. And he said, look, there's going to be two kinds of people. There's going to be people that let this experience make them worse. They're going to come out of it worse with more bad habits, more unhealthy, in a worse place. And there's going to be people who come out of it better. And he said, you need to treat this as a gift.
Ew. I came out better. I saw that, and I would hear that in different resources that I get behind, and I was like, I'm going to make it a point to be better through this, because this is already bad enough world-wise.
Yeah.
Like I haven't experienced anything like that in my life, right? Again, the worst thing that I've experienced that mattered on a country scale was 9/11. And I was a kid, so I had the safety of my parents. But as an adult, maybe the recession, the first one that I had to deal with as I started working, and I was realizing oh wow, I could work a lot and this money doesn't fucking mean shit. I'm paying for my own groceries, like you said. And I would get literally 2 or 3 bags, and I'd be okay for a couple of days. And there's pride in that, but it doesn't get you very far. Yeah. And then going through the pandemic and having a sort of a mindset towards I don't care what better means, but it's going to be better than I am right now, because if we're all staying home, I'm lucky enough to be one of the people still working somehow. What the fuck ever I was doing, it was weird that I was an essential employee. But anyway, I'm making sure that I'm better through this. And luckily I was with somebody that wanted the same exact thing. So that was great. I didn't want to, because I know tons of people who are way worse now than they were.
Some people it really impacted them. It impacted me. I was able to I was contracting. I started contracting back as a software engineer. So I was able to make money that way, but the gym got pretty decimated. Yeah. And I kept it open on my own dime, really. And
you told me about some numbers.
Yeah.
We go back and forth on some stuff. Yeah. You told me about some numbers just because I had asked out of curiosity one day, and that's fucking tragic.
Yeah. It was hard. And some of it never came back.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, but it is what it is, dude. I'm here now. The gym in Stockton's still there. I got a dope ass group of people.
You got dope people there.
They're fucking soldiers. I got a great crew in Nashville. I have a bunch of cool friends. My kids are doing great. I met you. You're awesome.
Okay. Thank you.
It's awesome. It is, man.
It is. I really appreciate it. I mean, I do not think I'd be doing this, at least in this capacity, this early, or would have had the balls to do it had you not.
Bruh. You're just getting started, dude.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm just going to keep going, dude.
Okay. I'm going to try, regardless of if MindWurm works out, I'm going to try to go from junior to senior producer. So I'm looking forward to that for Inside BJJ.
I'm going to give you a senior producer belt. A special belt.
You know what? That would probably make me cry more faster than a black belt would.
Give you a new road. I'm like, behold, it's a skin we put over it. What if I have a thing I put over that limits the buttons you could push?
That would actually be better.
You're not responsible enough to use those buttons.
I hit this button at the beginning of the show and this button at the end of the show.
Red button, go boom.
Red button, go record. Don't forget to hit that, Andrew.
Yeah. It's good though, man. I'm trying to keep a positive outlook about things and manage the things I tell myself. And I really believe that we have a lot of influence over our life. We really do. And it's scary because when you accept that, now you take away most of your excuses for not doing the things that you want to do or you believe you should do. Outside of lightning coming out of the sky and things that are totally out of your control, you still have a lot of influence on your life, man.
Yeah. I don't think and I don't know that I will be, but I'm not worried about that yet. I'm just trying to do what I'm doing as I'm going, but I don't think I'm quite out of a pit that I've been in, but I have to admit, like to reference the meaner part of myself, I could either lay in bed, which I have done, and I say things that are worse than I've said to anyone ever in my life. And no one in my life, even people that I'm familiar with, I luckily don't know many people that outwardly hate me or like I rule as far as like what their negative thoughts go towards, as far as I know. Lucky enough to be in that position. But I've said shit to myself that makes no sense to say to somebody, especially yourself.
Sure. You know it's a lie when you sell it to yourself.
Yeah, but it doesn't change the fact that it's really, as far as it feels like in the moment, accurate. And
it feels good.
It's almost a sort of terroristic masturbation to do it, because like I'm feeling something versus I'm doing nothing kind of deal.
It's like a security.
Yeah, almost. And it's crazy that I do that. And I'm aware of it as I do it. And anyway, so I get over that. And even in those moments, I have the last, especially, I don't know, 5 or 6 months that I've been working towards some serious changes that I've made now and that I'm living in and feeling some of the repercussions of, good and bad.
Yeah.
And just taking that time to transition and allowing all that to happen and knowing that I'm looking forward to things that I've moved myself through hard work to get to.
Yeah.
That has felt incredibly good overall. Yeah. And to have the evidence of something that I've worked on feel incredibly good overall during probably one of the worst periods of my entire life, if not the worst, is really great. Compared to it.
Yeah.
So ironic, and I wish it was a little different in how it turned out, but it's is what it is, like you said.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Keep going. So that's probably a good place, you think?
Oh, dude, we're 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Went by pretty quick.
Dang, I talk way too much. I'm sorry.
We both do, I think. But it was fun, man. I appreciate that. Do you, I know you do, but I'm going to try to get in the habit of saying this to guests. Do you have anything you want people to know about?
Yes.
Because I know there's a shitload of stuff you're doing that I would want to know about.
Well, you can listen to Inside BJJ. It's a podcast about grappling and combat sports.
Great one.
Also kind of weird too. You might like it. That's on Spotify. The live streams are on YouTube. Just look up Inside BJJ. It's been around for a long time. You can go to InsideBJJ.com also. And then if you're in Stockton, California, or in the area, you can go to 10th Planet Stockton. That's our school out there. And then Nashville, it is 10th Planet Nashville. I also have a Patreon if you really like me. Patreon.com/InsideBJJ. And then I also have another podcast that I guess I co-host and kind of like, I don't do tons of production, but I do a lot of editing on that show, which is The Bullpen. That is a grappling sports show. You can check that out. Right now you could see it on Inside BJJ's YouTube or the Grappling Hour on YouTube channel.
And those are live as well, right?
Those are live. We're going to be doing the pre-show for the PGF out in Vegas coming up in November.
Hell yeah.
And then I think I'm going to be going to Subversive in November also.
You think so?
Yeah, to their Fight Club event. Which is going to be bananas,
dude. Nuts. Yeah, if you guys don't know about that, look that up.
Yeah.
Have they talked about it yet?
Not super.
Okay, so when they do start talking about the information that is relative to, then definitely try to see that. It's going to be nuts.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's it for now.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for sitting down for episode 1. And
dude,
that was awesome.
I don't think I've ever talked about that stuff in depth like that. So
I'm happy that you talked about it with me, because I'm fascinated by it.
Well, I could tell you more.
Probably off camera.
Thanks.
Thank you, dude. I love you.
Love you too, man.